to everybody. It's my pleasure to be today with all of you. Apologies because I had an urgent meeting in Brussels and I cannot be in person here in Bilbao for your conference. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to introduce the topic in which I'm working at that moment in collaboration with colleagues of a working group at the European Medicines Agency. Okay, perfect. The title of the project is Language Discrimination in the Access to Pediatric Clinical Trials in Europe, and the aim of this work is to work specifically in the field of ethics, equity, children's rights, justice, and of course, fairness. And the goal of this working group, it's based in a need that we identify at Sant Joan de Déu Children's Hospital in Barcelona, based in the unfair, let's say, situation that we face sometimes when we need to incorporate international patients in pediatric clinical trials in our site. As you know, be born or live with a rare disease, it's a lottery, the lottery of health or the lottery of the disease. It's really unfair to be a child and live with a rare condition or in general with a condition. And also, it's very unfair that depending on your disease, the therapeutic opportunities that our child can have are different. We have some conditions like low syndrome, that is the condition that Daniel, the boy in the screen in your left side, he has, in which we don't have any targeted treatment. We can manage only the symptoms, but we don't have a specific drug or treatment to address to the patients living with the low syndrome. In some conditions, like the condition of Paul in the middle of the screen, we can have sometimes the option of drug repurposing, an initial treatment approved with a different indication that after be administered by the doctors to the patients, we foresee and we study new indications. And sometimes we are lucky and we have more than one treatment and as well clinical trials, like the case of Nora in the right side of the screen, that she was born with spinal muscular atrophy, and at that moment we have an approved treatment and several clinical trials across Europe. Said this, it's not only a matter to have a tailored treatment. When we talk about clinical trials, there is another challenge that is in the context of Europe to have this study close, let's say, to the home of the patient or in the same country. And this is not very frequent. You have in the screen the numbers about the countries involved in general in clinical trials in Europe, not in pediatric clinical trials, it's in general. And you can see here that in the case that the sponsor will be a commercial company, a pharma company, usually the number of countries, the average, it's around 3 countries. But when the sponsor is an academic institution or a non-commercial sponsor, usually the average is one country where this academic institution is. Considering that in Europe we have 27 official languages and more than 30 different European countries, members of the European Commission area or not, the chance or the opportunity to have a clinical trial in the same country where the patient lives, it's really low. In the cases of a commercial sponsor is 0.42% of opportunities, but in the case of a non-commercial sponsor is 0.16. Said this, and knowing that in some cases patients are discriminated by the mother tongue that they speak or the country where they live, and we consider that this is an ethical practice, what we have done is create this working group that I already mentioned. It's established within Enpr-EMA, the European Network of Pediatric Research of the European Medicines Agency, that has the aim to analyze the state of the art about which are the chances of access to a pediatric clinical trial in Europe, how these studies incorporating international patients are managed, and specifically analyze how the language diversity is addressed. Because what we want to provide is recommendations to guarantee that patients will not be discriminated by their mother language, and hopefully in the future this practice to travel to another European country by European citizens will be more frequent because everything makes possible this opportunity. Said this, we are doing this analysis of the state of the art, collecting data. We have different sources to collect data. The first one is analyze the clinical trial protocols, because in some of these studies, what we have identified is that language is part of the eligibility criteria. And when there is no scientific reason, as I said, we consider that this is not ethical and it's unfair. We have created a computer program to read the eligibility criteria of all the pediatric studies at that moment published in the clinicaltrials.gov, and we are close to finish a scientific manuscript with the analysis that we have done. And at that moment, we are doing a bigger analysis with all the data that it's in the database of UDRA-CT, the portal of the European Commission. Also, we have collected data from the clinical trial sites. We conducted 3 surveys, one addressed in general to the hospitals, the sites where pediatric studies are conducted, and 2 specifics to report good practices and cases of discrimination. We have done as well a big piece of data collection through patient organizations, collecting the experience or the preferences from parents of children living with a rare disease. And at that moment, we are working to collect the expertise from sponsors, from academia or from pharma companies. This slide is a snapshot with literally text describing pediatric clinical trial protocols, requesting that the patient will have a specific level of competence in a specific language, or that a specific language will be the mother tongue of the patients. In regards of the clinical trial sites involved in this data analysis, at that moment we have data from 39 sites. You can see here the list of the countries. Mainly these answers come from Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands. From all these different clinical trial sites, we have collected good practices, more than 100. Most of them came from the Nordic countries that most of them transfer patients to Denmark. And we had here data from 50 studies conducted by academic institutions in this country. We had also collected from the sites 18 studies in which the patients were excluded to participate. Basically, the majority of these studies are related to rare diseases, 70% of them, and 70% of them as well are commercial studies. And the patients that were excluded to participate were not only from European countries, as well from non-European countries. From the parents' questionnaire, we collected data from more than 1,400 answers, mainly from Spain, because this initiative is led by St. John de Déu Children's Hospital, and the second country providing answers was France. But in general, beyond the country difference, what we have seen is that there is an important acceptability about the opportunities that digitalization and decentralization of clinical trials can allow to the families to participate in cross-border clinical trials. We will see in the next slide, because what we asked to these parents was inform us about the acceptability of all these options that you can see in the slides, from telemedicine to electronic assent or home nursing, in the scenario in which the clinical trial will be conducted in the country of the patient, and in the next slide, specifically in the case that this family has to travel to another European country. As you can see, there is no big difference between one slide and the other one, and it's a big acceptability, this blue, dark blue color, about the option of willing to accept all these different services that in some cases will reduce the number of travels to the site where the study is performed. Specifically, I wanted to highlight this outcome of the survey because this demonstrates that there are, let's say, intermediate solutions between, of course, the case of no accessing to a clinical trial abroad, travel abroad, and probably reduce the number of visits to the main site with the option to incorporate the digitalization and the IT solutions. Said this, also we had conducted an analysis about all the studies conducted at San Juan de Déu Children's Hospital, incorporating international patients, because for us was really important to learn about the different teams involved, the different activities that we do to make more comfortable the experience of these families that they need to commute to our country and our city to participate in a pediatric study. In the case of our site, the data collected was from 2017 until 2023. As you can see in the slide, at that moment, we received beyond European countries, patients from the Asiatic continent, South American continent mainly, and few patients from the US, Africa, and Australia. In terms of numbers, we have received patients from 44 different countries. They have been involved in 21 clinical trials, and in terms of the overall number of patients, they represent 181 patients. What we have learned about our model and can be, interesting for you and as well to be shared with colleagues from other hospitals is that access to a clinical trial in a different country where the patient is living, it's feasible. Depending on the model of the site, the expertise and the means that it has, of course, it's more common practice and it's easy to be conducted. In our case, we have a single point of contact for the sponsors. This makes more easy and efficient the process of the operational part and the deployment of all the logistics that require these studies. We have as well an international patient department that helps to centralize all the legal and administrative requirements prior to the screening visit, because this is the moment in which we check the eligibility criteria of the patient, and if the patient accomplishes, it means that is eligible to participate in the clinical trial. Specifically about the language requirements, we have in our institution in-house translation service to 15 different languages, and in terms of all the studies in which we require translation, in a little bit more of the half of these studies, we were the language providers. Of course, if we cannot cover any language from any family, we have always the option to hire a professional vendor with expertise in health, and as well we have specific devices for translation if it's needed in an emergency situation, and for example we don't have in-house our colleagues from the international patient department or the professional vendor. Also, something that we saw in these studies incorporating international patients is that in the 42% of these studies were not the requirement of answer patient-reported outcome measures or quality of life scales. Let's say this is one of the problems that we need to face when including patients from other countries, because not always these tools are validated into the language of the patient and the family. Something that also is relevant and very important is that the site that will incorporate international patients, or in general conduct studies in the field of pediatric rare diseases, it's the expertise managing the complexity of these patients, but of course the particularities to work with very small sample of patients. And what we foresee here is that if we don't have the options of provide cross-border access to these studies, probably we have the challenge that we never will achieve the sample of patients that require these studies. It's important to highlight that beyond, the challenges that in general pediatric studies they have, it's feasible, as I said, include international patients in clinical trials. And it's really important before to finalize the clinical trial protocol, include in the design of these studies the insights from patients and families, because it's not only about the science. A clinical trial protocol, it's important that also will allow the best experience possible to the participants. To finalize my presentation, comment that we are at that moment analyzing all this big amount of data, learning, of course, from these good practices and for the cases of discrimination and from the experience of high expert sites. And probably in less than 1 year, we will have the opportunity to publish this guidance to help academic institutions, to help as well pharma companies designing pediatric clinical trials to make feasible this cross-border access, because at the end, this is something related to the patient rights, the children's rights, and every child in Europe deserves the same opportunities to access to science, regardless the country where this patient is living. And to finalize, I want to highlight this sentence. Sometimes we dream a lot. We think about that cross-border access, it's important, but to make this feasible, we need to start to work on it and do it together. Patients, organizations, families, patients, clinical trial sites, and of course, sponsors. We need to work together to ensure that pediatric clinical trials not only will be accessible if required, if it's required by the opportunity of cross-border access, also really design studies that will be based in the needs and in the preferences of the patients. Real pediatric clinical center studies. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present my work. And if any family or clinician involved in this meeting is interested to contribute to this project or to know more about this, this is my email of contact. Thank you so much.